Hi, I'm Linda from Autumn. I would like to talk about carbohydrates. First is an introduction about carbohydrates. What are carbohydrates? Carbohydrates is one of the basic food group and is important to a healthy diet. It also constitutes about 75% of mass of dry plant material. Carbohydrate also is the most energy source for living animals. So, plant will undergo photosynthesis process to produce carbohydrates. See, carbohydrates have the general formula of CnH2nON. Carbohydrates are polyhydride aldehyde or ketones, or substances that yield such compounds on hydrolysis. For example, carbohydrate glucose is a polyhydride aldehyde, while carbohydrate fructose is a polyhydroxy ketone. Next, I'll pass it to my group member.
Hi, my name is Ithika. I'm going to talk about the structure and function of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates consist of carbon, hydrogen, and also oxygen. The general empirical structure for carbohydrates is CH2O bracket N. These are organic compounds organized in the form of aldehyde or ketones with a multiple hydroxyl group coming off the carbon chain. The building blocks of all carbohydrates are sugars, simple sugars called monosaccharide. A monosaccharide can be a polyhydroxyl aldehyde, that is the aldose, or polyhydroxyl ketone, that is the ketose. The carbohydrates can be structurally represented in any of these three forms, that is open chain structure, hemiacetal structure, and Hayward structure. Open chain structure. It is a long straight chain form of a carbohydrate. Hemiacetal structure, the first carbon of the glucose condenses with the OH group of the fifth carbon to form a ring structure, and the last one, Hayward structure, presence of the pyranous ring structure. So now we're going to move to function of the carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are the main source of energy. It is an important energy source required for the various metabolic activities. Some of the major functions includes living organisms use carbohydrates as accessible energy to fuel cellular reaction. These are most abundant dietary source of energy. Carbohydrates, along with being the chief energy source in many animals, are instant sources of energy as well. Glucose is broken down by glycolysis to yield ATP. Carbohydrates also can be served as energy stores, fuels, or metabolic intermediates. It is stored as glycogen in animals and starch in plants. Stored carbohydrates act as energy source instead of protein. For your information, carbohydrates are intermediates in the biosynthesis of fats and protein. Most likely, it also aids in the regulation of nerve tissue and is the energy of the source for the brain. Carbohydrates get associated with the lipids and protein to form surface antigens, receptor, molecules, vitamins, and antibiotics. The most related to body, most commonly related to body, formation of the structural framework of RNA and also DNA. Most commonly, all of us had studied bio knowing these things. These are linked to many proteins and lipids, and linked carbohydrates are important in cell-to-cell communication and also interaction between cells and other elements. Carbohydrates that are rich in fibers help to prevent constipation, and lastly, they also help in the modulation of the immune system. Now, I'm going to explain to you about classification of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates can be separated into four. The first one, monosaccharide. Mono. It is a one sugar molecule. Monosaccharide can be broken down into glucose, fructose, and galactose. It's easy to remember because all is the glucose, fructose, and galactose. The second one is disaccharide. If it's a di, then it's contained two. So it's two sugar molecules. It can be broken down into sucrose, lactose, and maltose. The third one will be oligosaccharide. This is most commonly we never would have heard about it. It is a 2 to 10 sugar molecule. that is can be broken down into two, that is raffinose and stachylose. The last one will be polysaccharide. Polysaccharide we have heard in many things. There are 10 or more sugar molecules as well. That is can be broken down to three, that is starch, glycogen and cellulose. Thank you.
So for disaccharides are basically two monosaccharides joining together in a condensation reaction or dehydration synthesis, forming a disaccharide. A disaccharide is any carbohydrate in the world made up of two monosaccharides that are joined covalently by an oxygen, which is O-glycidic bond. During this condensation reaction, a hydroxyl group of one of the monosaccharide combines with another hydrogen atom, forming and releasing a water molecule. Common disaccharides include lactose, maltose, and sucrose. The digestion of starch into glucose units by enzyme amylase forms maltose. Maltose is also one of the most common disaccharides. It is basically two glucose bonded together by an O-glycidic bond. Another common disaccharide is sucrose. Sucrose is a disaccharide that is the main transport sugar in plants, and it is the combination of fructose and glucose. Lactose, on the other hand, is made when galactose and glucose bond together and is only found in mammalian milk. Now I pass it on to polysaccharides.
Moving on, now I will be presenting on polysaccharides. Polysaccharides are made up of many monosaccharides that are joined together by glycosidic bonds. This long complex chain contains up to several thousand units of monosaccharides. This is why they are also known as polymers, as they are a chemical compound with repeating structural units. Polysaccharides play an important role in both plants and animals. They are the source of energy in animal cells, and they also play a part in the formation of structural components in plant cells. Unlike both monosaccharides and disaccharides, polysaccharides are not sweet in taste and are insoluble in water, making them suitable for storage. Polysaccharides are very large in size, making them macromolecules. The structure of polysaccharides vary in length and can exist in a variety of forms depending on the type of monosaccharide present, how the monosaccharides are bonded to one another, as well as their ability to be branched and folded in various ways. Polysaccharides can be further classified into two different categories, namely homopolysaccharides and heteropolysaccharides. Homopolysaccharides are made up of many units of monosaccharides of the same type. These monosaccharides are bonded covalently to one another through glycosidic bonds. Two types of glycosidic bonds can exist in homopolysaccharides depending on which carbon they are bonded together with via the oxygen atom. The first type is the 1,4 glycosidic bond and the second is the 1,6 glycosidic bond. The first type of glycosidic bond forms a linear homopolysaccharide, whereas the second type results in branched structures. Examples of homopolysaccharides include cellulose and starch. The next type of polysaccharide that exists is called heteropolysaccharides. Based on its name, we know that it is also made up of many units of monosaccharides. However, these monosaccharides differ from one another. Usually, heteropolysaccharides contain at least two or more types in each repeating unit. Most heteropolysaccharides consist of a disaccharide and are often associated with proteins. Heteropolysaccharides has the function to provide extracellular support to different types of organisms, ranging from bacteria to humans. An example of heteropolysaccharide is hyaluronic acid.
Hi, it's me again. Now I will talk about the charity handles in molecule. Based on the concept of minor image, a group of things that cannot be superposed is called chiral object. Well, a group of things that can be superposed is called a chiral object. Next is handedness. Any organic molecule that contains a carbon atom with four different groups attached to it in a tetrahedral orientation process. Such a carbon atom is called as a Charles center. Well, the Charles molecule is mean that a molecule whose minor images are not superimposable have a Charles molecule do not possess handedness. Glyceraldehyde is the simplest example of a child monosaccharide. It made out of four different groups such as H, OH, CHO, and CH2OH. In the center is a carbon atom. Most of the monosaccharides exhibit handedness. They exist in two forms, such as left-hand form and a right-hand form. Next is a video talk about what is charity and how did it get in my molecules. Let's go. I have more understanding about the curry after watching the video. Okay, that's all for our